There we go. All right. So you guys, I'm gonna first off start out by saying we're gonna go over the buyer rep agreement today. If we have time, which I do not know if we're gonna have enough time, we will go over the listing contract as well. If we run out of time with that, we will jump on that on a different call and kind of go over that. But one thing that I'm gonna put out there, because of the fact that the last time we had a conversation around this buyer rep document, we are not price fixing. This is just an open forum for us to speak and give opinions about what we're doing on different documents. You do not have to take for verbatim what we are doing here. If I throw out a compensation, that doesn't mean that that's what you have to follow. That's just basically what I'm doing in my business. So there is no standard that we're setting here. So I just want to make that disclaimer out there for everybody. I'm gonna do a screen share quick. Okay. Can somebody give me a thumbs up that they can see my screen? Thank you, Matt. And Matt is on here as well. McGuire is on here as a lender who can answer any lending questions. So I did ask him to come back just because of with all this lawsuit stuff and us talking about this today, there might be some questions out there around that. So first off, I'm going to just kind of go over you guys how I speak to my buyers on contracts and how I explain different things. So basically the first form that I go over with them, and this is on the bottom of my email as well. Every time I send out an email to them, every time I send them a property, this is in there. And basically what I tell them is this is a standard form. Minnesota law requires us to go over this form with you. So what I do is I actually go over it and I say in a transaction, there's the seller and the seller's broker. There's the buyer and the buyer's broker. There's dual agency if I'm representing both, and then I kind of go into dual agency and what that means. I also tell them, dual agency doesn't happen quite a bit anymore for me in my market. I would say probably about 95% of the time I'm not the buyer and the seller's agent. So I go into that with them. I explain what a facilitator is, and then I ask them if they have any questions about who's in a transaction. And if not, then I say, this again is a standard Minnesota form that I need you to sign. And everybody does have to sign this for compliance in the state of Minnesota. Most of the time they don't have questions around this. I even go into detail about who a title is, who a lender is with this form, just so that they understand that fully. But this is the first form that I go over with any clients of mine. If it's a buyer, if it's a listing, anybody you should be having real estate transactions with, you should always be going over this agency relationship form with them. If you want this on the bottom of your email, please reach out to me. What I'll show you guys here quick is if I do, a compose email, drag this, drop this down. See if I can get it to move over. So this is just an email message of mine, but at the bottom of it, I have basically copied and pasted in here this Minnesota law requires. And then if they click on this link, it will take them right to that agency form. So I can go ahead and put this out here so that way you can attach it to your email as well. I'll put that on the Energy Connect page, just the verbiage behind it, and then the link that you can basically put right at the bottom of your email if that's helpful to anybody. But again, that's something the standard kind of practice that I've always done with my agency rep. So we're going to jump in here to the buyer's rep agreement. And again, I'm just going to tell you, I'm going over what I basically go over with my clients. It could be very different for you guys. But basically when I come in here, I'm going over the date, obviously. I don't usually worry about page 1 of 1. We don't look at that when we look at compliance, but I'm putting in the buyer's name. National Realty Guild would be the broker. And then I, from my first point of contact with them, I put in the date. So today's date, and I always put 6 months. I always put 6 months because kind of like what Liz Reynolds said before, you want to make sure that you're within that closing period so you don't have to redo a contract. So even now, with it being May, I might even throw in here like December 31st of 2024 and just explain to the people. And this is what I do during this time is I explain to them that we're dating during this period of time. If for some reason something should happen and we need to like not date each other anymore, I have all means to, cancel this contract with you and I am a-okay with it. Again, each agent is going to be different on what they do here. But I do explain that to them because during this period of time, I'm showing them what my value is as an agent. So I don't ever have anybody push back. I've never had anybody cancel a contract with me. But I always do explain to them, like along this way, if something should happen or if you have any questions that I'm not helping you with, by all means, I will let you out of this contract. We're going to kind of jump down here and this goes over the broker's compensation. So in this, and I know a lot of people are doing a lot of different things because I've had lots of conversations with people. Right now, what I'm putting in here is I'm not putting a retainer fee. I'm putting 0. Again, that is completely up to you if you want to do a retainer fee. I'm not currently doing that right now. But in number 2 here, what I am doing is I'm playing it on the high side for my market in my area. So I'm doing buyer shall pay broker our broker's compensation of 2.7%. 2.7 right now in my market is a little bit high. I haven't seen a 2.7 in quite some time. But you always want to be on the higher side on this because you cannot ever up it. You can always lower it, but you cannot ever up it on this. So I would say be cautionary about your market and what's going on out there. If it's 3%, put 3% in there. You can always go back and negotiate that. If it's not a percentage, you can go ahead and put a dollar amount in here. And then on line 34, I am, always putting in there 180 days. Basically what that means is, from the time that the contract is done, if you showed them a property in that 180 days, you have, the right to go back for compensation for that. I do want to point out, and Liz Reynolds did point this out in her last video. If you guys didn't watch that, go back and Sweet Assist and watch that training back because Liz pointed out a lot of things in here that I'm using moving forward with my contracts and a lot of very good verbiage. So if you look here, line 38 says broker is authorized to negotiate and receive compensation paid by seller, our broker representing or assisting seller. In this, I am always putting shall. We definitely want that to still happen. We're still going to be seeing sellers paying compensation. So I always check shall in that. I'm going to move down here. Basically, depending on what kind of property you're showing them, 57, 58, you want to, check the appropriate boxes there. And then this is the part where I go over with them on 67 and 68. I'm going over them on, do you want me to help you find a title company for closing? What does that mean? So I'm kind of going over that process with them as well. And the majority of the time they're like, I don't care. You work with them, day in and day out. You tell us who we should be working with. Haven't had a lot of buyers in the past few years say no. But if they do and they have an attorney or a title company they want to work with, you just check, the different box. So that is pretty easy on that one. Agency relationship, again, we went over that form already. This just basically goes over it one more time. And then it goes over the dual agency. So that way they do agree to the dual agency. You have to sign this, they have to sign it. Again, the state of Minnesota really just wants us to emphasize that dual agency. These are the really big key points right here for the buyer rep. And again, Liz Reynolds went over this, and ever since she went over that with us, this is what I've been putting in my buyer rep contracts. So the first thing that I always put in here and I always explain to my clients is buyer will pay the broker National Realty Guild a broker admin fee of $5.95 at closing. So I'm having my buyers and my sellers pay that $5.95 at closing. I explain to them what that $5.95 is. And what I state is it's, $5.95 goes to my broker. That does not go to me. And that happens per transaction. And what they do is they store your documents for 7 years and they check it for compliance. And if there's any auditing that comes up with the state of Minnesota, they are, on the hook compliant for that, but they're double checking those documents for you and representing you as the buyer in this transaction as your broker. I have to have a broker because I am not a licensed broker in Minnesota. I always explain to them. So then I kind of explain to them too that, all licensed real estate agents have a broker that audits them and keeps them in compliance and keeps them up to date with everything. And then I'm underneath them. And I always say, my broker Randy is a really good resource. If we should get into any kind of legal issues, I can get on the phone, give him a call, and he can help us with that. So that's how I explain the $5.95 broker admin fee. And then this other blurb that you put in here is something again that Liz had stated to us, and that is buyer's agent compensation may be renegotiated based on the terms of the purchase agreement / offer. So this is our workaround with this lawsuit that's happening right now is because we don't have a new form that's come out. Randy can kind of speak maybe a little bit further if he's seen something else come out on that end, but at this point, this is the verbiage that I have in there, and I do explain to them what's happening, basically in July. I go over the fact that the sellers don't have to, offer us as buyers agents compensation anymore. And if they do that, then we need to renegotiate either the purchase agreement and we need to figure out how we can, get it looped in, or you're going to have to be paying me out of pocket at closing. And then we're going to have to negotiate the terms on that. Does that mean 2.5? Does that mean 2%? I go over all of that with them. Luckily for me right now, I haven't had any of this come across with zero commission, but I do know it's going to come across at some point in time. So I will make sure that you guys have this copy and pasted verbiage. Again, I will put this on the Energy Connect Facebook page for you. So that way you can start building these into contracts. And again, we did talk about this previously with Liz. I'm going to kind of stop right there and see, and I'm sorry, you guys, I can't do both screens at one time. I'm going to stop
Pretty
sharing.
crafty doing this from your car.
Yes, I am doing this from the car. Any thoughts, Randy, on that verbiage or anything else that people should be adding in?
Yeah, so I was going to ask if anybody has any unique ideas that they're trying to pull off because we got to follow the state law, And so this isn't a law though, it's an ethics issue. And that line that says that we can negotiate, the Board of Realtors has ethic issues. So when we deal with other realtors, we follow their rules. And they haven't removed and don't foresee removing the line that says that we can't negotiate commission in a purchase agreement. If somebody does, all of a sudden you could get whacked with a fine. So they're trying to make it so that the purchase agreement doesn't hinge the seller's decision on their net takeaway. And so given the ability in that buyer's rep like that, I kind of see it again, but it basically said that it gives you the ability to renegotiate commission, right? I mean, we're all going to try to do it. I'm trying to figure out how still. I called the legal hotline a week and a half ago when Mike Hammerski saw an attorney list a home and put zero commission. And he asked if that's what's going to start happening. And I say, I don't know. So when I called into the Board of Realtors to ask what kind of solution has been made, because I wanted to actually write a database to share commission that's not the MLS, they said part of the ruling says that as participants, we can't share the information with some company to make it public. But I think I'd say let's keep the language in there because until agent calls out the violation, there's no violation, And so somehow we're gonna have to communicate the commission. Did you did the lender that was on basically said that I think they don't have to worry about it. They get to hide their commission and their points and all that stuff. So, but when lenders do commission, are they able to pay realtor commissions through closing costs? Did you hear that?
Matt, I'm gonna let you jump on and answer that question because he is on here.
Hey, you're on mute though.
Yeah, can you
Thanks.
hear me now?
Yeah.
The old Verizon commercial. Say your question one more time. Like, how can we pay the realtor commission and closing costs, you're saying?
Yeah. Is there a way to do that? Is that approved by the bank? Underwriters?
No, because basically the way that, well, like some of this stuff we don't know yet, just because of, like you're saying, we're kind of waiting for July as well to see how things shake out and what, if there's new forms that are produced that are, gonna be industry wide that we all, you guys use, but then we adapt and, as part of our process. But from my interpretation of it right now, it's that the commission would be a separate part of the agreement. So it's kind of like the way that I described it 2 weeks ago, I think was like, if we, like when you guys put in an agreement, like the microwave must stay, the dishwasher must stay, things like that. The TV stand must stay. And that's put into the purchase agreement. That I don't really even do anything with that as a lender. Usually I'll tell you leave that stuff out or I just won't send it to underwriting. So it's basically, that's how I've kind of described it, is that it will be basically a standalone separate agreement. It'll be somewhere within the purchase agreement, or it would be, an attachment or an amendment or addendum. But it would basically be that, seller agrees to pay, whatever, 2% buyer's agent commission. And then it wouldn't, because it's not looped into the interested party contributions that we
Right.
worry about. It's not counted towards that. So then we wouldn't put it necessarily within, we wouldn't document it the same way we would like seller concessions, for instance.
Yeah. So my problem here is when I called into the board, everybody is I feel like there's not really a proactive, real in stone way to work around this. Is basically get the contract signed and make sure that the listing agent's paying out a co-op before you show the house. So we got to make a bunch of phone calls now to find out. There's nothing really that's proactively happening, I feel like, to give us a workaround other than us figuring it out. So I'm on top of calling and dealing with the legal staff to find out what they're coming up with for us. But so far it's nothing.
Randy, I'm assuming, I know the association's forms committees are working on new forms. The response that I've gotten from them is that they don't even know if they're going to have this done in time, because it takes forever for forms to get out. Do you foresee July? I mean, we're almost into June here, so.
Yeah, that's my issue. So usually we update our forms and they come out in August every year anyways. So they're probably already working on something. If anybody goes to, yeah, I got a link right here, but it's mnrealtor.com and I can go in the chat box and put this whole link. And this link shows what's happening, exactly for Minnesota here and what's on the slate and how it will affect us. So, and then there's a number on here that says what is NAR actually, or Minnesota's local area doing, right? Every state's different. So if you pull up this infographic, it says that the forums committee is working on it, right? We just don't know what they're going to do. I can actually paste this stuff too. This is what the association is doing right now. So figuring out how to lobby, educate us, and work on new forms. Sounds like a real valuable group still. I'm not sure. I've been thinking twice about this whole thing. Like, if we just don't have the realtor thing, we don't have to worry about being able to negotiate and all that stuff. So we really lost a lot of credibility with it without, in my, for what we paid the dues for them to legally help us. This is really putting a hinder on our careers. So it kind of really lessens their value because anybody can go out and negotiate and get a license and then You know, I mean, they make our forms and stuff like that, so they do a lot of things, but I don't know. It's not like they buckled on this whole lawsuit thing, because there are a lot of reasons they had to agree to it, but I don't know. It's gonna be a tough one, but I'm pretty sure we'll just work around it, because you know, the main key is that we don't think too many people. I already had a lot of phone calls from agents already saying, hey, my seller wants to offer 0. And it was like more of educating the seller that, you know, if you offer 0, your neighbor is going to be offering 2.5. So why would everybody come and look at your house when your neighbor's offering the co-op? So it puts them in a less competitive advantage. So I think there's still going to be, right, we're going to work around it. There's 2 ways to get to the same goal, like we saw with that real broker. So but you know, be careful. So putting that on that buyer's rep agreement, going back to that, you gotta probably call the listing agent first and talk about co-op before you start negotiating in your purchase agreement, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So call and find out if there's a co-op. If there's not a co-op, then say, well, how are we going to make this work? And then we're going to get into the conversation of whether or not the buyers actually have funds. You know, because what about these low cost, no money down loans and things, right? That's one of the more sticky situations that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get paid. And it's going to have to come out of the seller's net at some point. They're going to have to change their agreement and pay us if they're not willing to. But we believe that running into this, there'll be some friction and education, but a lot of people will still be co-oping after we educate them. So probably shouldn't be too big of an issue.
I think it is like what you say, Randy, where if you educate them, you know, all the listings that I've been working with recently, I've said, you know, this has always been an option for you. This is nothing that's new. It's just the fact that our standard was kind of set. But moving forward, we need as many people through your property as possible. And this is going to help get people through the property. And a lot of people don't realize that, you know, 50%, 58% of people are looking for homes on the internet now. They're not calling and, you know, going off of a sign. They're not reaching out like they used to. So it's a little bit different. But it is all about educating them, and showing them the value. And the goal at the end of the day is to sell a house. That's what I always say. Do you want to sell your house? That's why you called me. So just going over that. Does anybody have any questions on the buyer rep form? There was a question. Oh, go ahead, Jeff. Yep.
I'm sorry, Jill. Yeah, I have a quick question. So when you include that language, there, the buyer's agent compensation, what do you give them for like examples, or do you like, how do you explain why you have that on there? Maybe I missed that part.
That's okay.
Well, look,
oh, go ahead.
well, just so you know, this has always been on there, right? I mean,
Well,
if you read the,
we haven't written it in
entirely?
there. We haven't written it in there on line 129, buyer's agent compensation may be renegotiated based on, I mean, so if it's part of the form, you don't have to explain it, but if you're adding something to the form, I feel like, you know, I need to explain why I added that on there. And if I can give them an example of, okay, look, here's an example of how I renegotiated, I had to help them out or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the examples would be so that your buyer doesn't have to pay it out of their pocket, right?
Okay, so the 2.7 now is on them, and so this is like, hey, yeah, this I'm trying to fight for you. Okay.
You know, there's a lot of
Yeah.
times we'll write in 2.7 and they pay out 2.5 and we just let it go, right?
Right.
Usually we just kind of go with what the co-op is.
Right.
I guess 2.7, you might have to say, I'm not worried about it, but if they pay it, I'll take it. So let me write 2.7 in there
Right.
or something.
Right. Okay.
And again, Jeff, I'm just going to tell you that the disclaimer that I said at the beginning of this, look into the market that you're working in, because, you know, if 2.7 isn't, you know, what it should be, again, we're not price fixing. We're not doing anything along that lines. You need to put in whatever amount that you are okay with. Just make sure it's on the higher side, because like I had said, you can't change it to go higher. You can change it to go lower.
Yeah, I'm good with going higher for sure. I just want to, since all the changes, I just want to say, okay, so now we put this in there, because before it was like a given that we were gonna get paid by the seller, and now we still might be able to, and as part of negotiations, even if they put 0, we give them an offer, a good offer, and throw in, hey, you're gonna also pay this 2.5% or whatever, and probably gonna go for it, right?
Yeah.
Make all that money off of a little tiny loan, so.
Yeah, it has to get rolled into the deal. There's no other way to magically make the money pop up, right? So we're gonna have to roll it into the deal. I'm not sure that one ethics rule, you know. But it's not a law, it's an ethics between realtors, so that's one good thing.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Who else? Somebody else is trying to come up. If you guys try to come up with any crafty sales pitches, just make sure it complies with the law. So one time I got audited big time by the Department of Commerce. I did look at them when they said Chapter 82, and I was like a deer in headlights. They're like, what are you talking about? You don't know. Well, Chapter 82 is the real estate law. So if anybody was to Google real estate law, Minnesota, it'll pop up in Chapter 82, and every single law for our licenses is outlined in that chapter. And so I've read it from beginning to end because I had to. You know, I can probably, if anybody's coming up with any ideas on how to pitch somebody and trying to make their own agreements, I really would recommend you don't try to create your own agreements, because anytime we do that in front of the Department of Commerce, they say, well, this is your way to work around state forms. It's like, no, especially even when we had short sale agreements for sellers, we would have extra language in there, and it was all about disclosure and protection, but it gave them another thing to challenge, which cost, you know, an attorney at $300-400 an hour to help me explain, you know, but it was nothing, but they get to throw it in there because that's what they get to do. Make you wonder if what you're doing is right, and you have to tell them. Like, they will not consult, they don't tell you. After they talk to you, you're pulled over already. It's not like here to help. So if anybody's going to try to create any forms, please call me. I think I heard Dennis might do that, or maybe Jeff. I don't remember.
Not me.
One question I did have, I have a couple text messages that people sent me. Retainer fees, Randy, how does Energy feel about retainer fees? There's a lot of people saying like they're gonna do it for showings. They're gonna
Don't
do
mind.
them.
I guess we're gonna have to come up with something, because there'll probably be like a small split since we're cashing checks, and then we'll wind up capping out if you get the admin fee. But I'm all for retainer fees. Yeah, I mean, if you can get them. We used to always charge them when I did short sales, because there was so much time and effort going into a file. I think we would charge like $9.95 up front to collect all their paperwork and stuff like that. So if you can get a retainer fee, go ahead.
Do you have an example, Randy, of like when you were doing short sales, what did you charge for a retainer fee?
I think it was started at like $600-700, but we started getting up to like $11.95, $12.95, because we just started going, you know, we got too many files. Really the only expert at it. I mean, our companies from agents from Keller and Remax dropping files off at the office and asking us to negotiate them when we were doing them. So we were starting to charge a good $1,000 up front for those. I mean, having to get all the bank documentation and the hardship letter and things like that, and an organized package to send to the bank, started to become kind of time consuming. So I don't know what I would charge, you know, I mean, I don't know what I would charge to ask a buyer to show them houses, or, I mean, even a seller, but you know, if you're going to charge a retainer fee, it's almost like maybe that's their flat fee. But that's the other thing. I had some agents trying to do, you know, those kind of like the listings where you charge hardly anything and get them on the MLS. And then they would call it, that would be the retainer fee, would be their upfront fee. And then they were done. But they never really brought it to my attention. And when I found out, we stopped doing that. But because that's not what we do, but there's just no money in it. So I don't know, a minimum retainer fee got to be at least $5.95 or $9.95. I mean, a couple $1,000 really. But yeah, that's all negotiable. You just show buyer property.
Does anybody have, I know Lynn had asked a question in the chat if you were talking with other brokers, Randy, and seeing what they were doing.
Not so much other brokers yet. I'm waiting for the brokers to like come in through the association. There's broker meetings here and there. And so that's why my first call was into the legal hotline to see what they've had other brokers inquire and ideas they've come up with. So they gave me a little bit of information, but it's still really vague. Just, that we're waiting for somebody to come up that can scrape, like a third party that'll scrape websites to get our rates. I mean, if we have to push, I guess, getting some design on our site that shows, I don't know how to do it actually, because our site then takes our listings and actually automatically syndicates with the MLS. So that would be a fine. We can't just put that number on our site. Maybe I should put up an extra mark and that says, call this number for the co-op, and then everybody can turn it in, and with their listing, we can look it up as an office.
Hey, Randy, I did see, or I had some, what I guess I would say instruction previously from an attorney that said, from their understanding of the NAR settlement, this is on a national level, but that you guys could now, again, depending on the programming of your site and all, how it connects to MLS, that's a different topic, I guess, that you would know much better than I, but he said that you guys will be able to publicly list, on a website. So on like an NRG website, you could list in theory, we're offering 2%. Now you can't put that in MLS, but it can be as a standalone on your website, or certainly they can call in, like you said, but it can be listed on a private website or anything. It's really just can't be on MLS is the main part of that piece.
It can be everywhere except the MLS.
Yeah.
We just have to figure out where that place is going to be. Charlene just sent me an email and said that the revised policy is going to effect August 17th. And that's probably the realtor board probably pushed them out and gave to buy time for everybody to get forms together, hopefully. So that's good. That gives us a little more time up to settlement agreement until September 16th to implement, and then maybe September 16th to implement the necessary policy changes. So yeah, it's getting bumped out a little bit now. And that's the thing. So we got these agents that are trying to call in, and I had somebody try to put 0 on a listing the other day, and then I called their broker and they wound up paying it. This doesn't start yet either. And so if anybody's running into this right now, just say, you guys, it hasn't begun. I mean, even if you're dealing with a buyer or a seller, just, the policies aren't even in place yet. It's business as normal. And it really is in Minnesota. The only difference is we have to explain this buyer rep now more often, which we should have been doing all the time. It just kind of became, I'm guilty too, right? You just put it on the top of the purchase agreement, get everything signed at once, and it's not even a real conversation in the past. I think I had more conversations about it when I was new than I've ever had over the last 20 years, actually.
Randy, I had a text message about being able to put it in the showing time. And I've heard conflicting things back and forth about this, about putting that compensation in showing time. Have you seen anything on that end?
Yeah, showing time is kind of, so far, that's what we've decided would be our workaround. We don't think that there's any violation to put it in showing time. So that is about the easiest place to put it, that everybody's been talking about. So if there is any issue with that I find out, I'll let everybody know right away. As we get closer, I'll continue to let everybody know what I find out too. And then Pam just asked, okay, so let me see if I can find it quick. She's asking about the actual language of this code of ethics thing. So if anybody's not familiar with this, ethics, realtors, chapter, I think it's code 14.6 or something, or 16. I gotta find it. It's like 14.16 or something. But basically it just says that, you know, the code says that realtors shouldn't put commissions into their purchase agreement. I did it back in like 2005 and a broker called me out on it. I didn't know. He just said, we're not supposed to do that. He never even cited anything. He just said, you can't do that. And then I found out about it later. So I didn't get in any trouble, but it was just like, he said, we're not supposed to do this. We can't put it on the PA, and didn't really tell me anything else. And then I found out later that it's just, I think what the reason is because if you start putting, well, one reason is okay, just because a broker might offer 2 points, they don't want an agent coming back. And then, so the broker already agreed to pay out 2 points. Seller knows this. They don't want you to come back and say, well, I need you to pay me 2.7. So it's more of it's a realtor code of ethics. So it's to not drive over and offend another realtor when you're negotiating with their seller, because you already knew what they were offering when you went and showed the house. And so now you're trying to put the seller in a position that their net could change because you want them to pay out additional commission. So that's the basis of it. I'm having a hard time really going through the code of ethics and finding the right code. I know I texted to you, Jill, once. And what's her name?
Yeah, I'll have to look and go back and see
Yeah.
what we found.
So anybody can Google code of ethics, and somewhere, you know, there's 100 different things in there at least. So, and like either 14 or 16, it's in there. Unethical to whatever. I gotta find it. I don't want to waste everybody's time looking up data. Does that work, Charlene?
Any other questions around the buyer rep agreement?
That was pretty
Anybody?
well explained. So
I'm gonna jump over to just the listing contract here for a second, because there is a verbiage that I've started to put in there, and again, we had kind of talked about this last time we had Liz on, but I'm gonna just kind of walk through this for a second with you guys, and then we can see if there's any questions around this. So basically, you know, this is a standard listing contract for exclusive right to sell. So you basically put the date in, you've got the legal address that goes in here, the seller's information, National Realty Guild is always put in there, and then the contract start and end dates. Again, what I'm doing right now is coming up with that start date with clients, and then the end date I'm always putting in there right now, December 31st. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm always like, I'm gonna, you know, try and sell your house way faster than that, but I always just kind of do December 31st for the end of the contract terms. If people want shorter than that, you guys, I'm not turning them down. I'm just again showing them the value of this is what it takes to get a listing, and this is all the process that I have to go through. And I go through that in my listing presentation to them. I do have a specific listing presentation that I go over with them about everything in a deal and walk through it with them. But I'm not gonna turn away a deal if it's unrealistic where they say, you know, nope, I want you for a month. I'm probably gonna walk away from that and say, you know what, I can't do this because of the fact that I have to put cost into pictures, my time, my effort in there. So sometimes the deals might not work in your favor. But I'm at the point where I can say like, no, that's not going to work for me. You're going to have to find a different agent that's going to let you do that. And I'm okay with it. We go over the price and then also going over the terms. I did have an agent last week that did reach out and ask, they didn't know the difference between an FHA and a conventional loan. And I literally was like, you need to reach out to your lender and they need to go over this all with you. And we should all be knowing the difference. We should know what houses are in that criteria. You know, FHA is obviously going to flag some things if a property is not up to standard. So definitely take a look at that. This next piece to it is, you know, goes over listing the display on the internet, listing the address, putting comments, any of the stuff in here. I am checking yes to all of these, and I'm explaining to the seller that, you know, we need to get this out onto as many platforms as we possibly can. If you don't want that, then, you know, it's going to be a little bit harder to sell your property. But I always do yes on those. Listed for lease, you know, that's again, if it's something that is listed for lease, you just have to state it in here. Can they not list it for lease? Make sure you're going over that with them. Majority of the time it's no, but it can come up in instances. Again, this just goes over the broker's compensation here, and on 119, you want to make sure that you put the, you know, if you're doing 6% for the whole deal, make sure you're putting 6% on 119 here, and then we break it out a little bit further when we go over the buyer rep. But on line 122 and 123, these are what I'm putting in my standard listings. So 122, seller has the right to negotiate any buyer agent cost independent on the offer terms. So that basically means when we get an offer in, you know, we can kind of go back and forth about the terms of it and see if it's something that will work for them and it won't work for them. And then 123, seller to pay a broker National Realty Guild a broker admin fee of $5.95 at closing. I put this in everywhere and I explain it very, very heavily because I don't want to get to the closing table and they are like, what's this $5.95 fee? I didn't know what this was about. So I do explain this to them. Again, I explained this to you guys a little bit earlier about what that means and how I explain it to them.
Hey, let me
And then,
interject.
oh yeah,
Go back to your line 129 or whatever you got there on that, or 123. So
Yep.
122. So this language in here, I just read this standard of practice again, and I posted it for you guys. It's 16 of the code of ethics has like 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 things about commission. And so if anybody does code of ethics, standard of practice, realtors 16, it goes 20 different items. And so nobody pointed this out to me. So maybe the attorney at the board and I were just kind of specifically talking about this one thing where you're not allowed to ask so I just really thought about this in depth. This is really clear to me. I got to read everything to make sure I'm not wrong right now, but it basically says that you can't try to manipulate the agent to change their co-op amount that was listed. So if an agent's charging you or trying to pay 2, you're not supposed to use the PA to call out the agent to the seller and make it look like they're not, you know, paying you enough. And so the code actually says you cannot use the offer to change the co-op pay. So there's nothing in here that says you can't require the seller to pay more. And so when you write in this line 122, you can prep the seller to be like, look, an agent might not be happy with the amount that I'm cooperating that you told me to pay out. So it's against the rules for them to get me to change my commission payout, and probably because you're not paying me enough to pay them, so I'm not able to offer it. And so this agent might come to you and ask for you to pay them their commission, just so you understand that. And if everybody starts doing that clearly, then it's just going to be clear and easier for the sellers to say, fine, let's just put the 2.5 on there. Tell everybody they're going to get 2.5 from me or whatever that happens. So unless I find out that an agent can't say, look, listing agent, as a buyer's agent, I need your seller to pay this. I'm not seeing anything that says, as long as they're not asking them to change the co-op fee, you're just saying, I need your seller to pay. I'm not asking you to change what you're paying. So I'm asking your seller to pay. So I'm going to strongly urge anybody to put this exact language that's on line 122.
I will again make sure that we get this put out on the Energy Facebook Connect page, this verbiage, and then I will also have Jeremy send it out in a mass email to everybody, just showing the examples of what we're using in here.
If nothing
So
else,
then-
I see it as an easier path to set the seller straight by saying this
Yes.
sentence and let them understand why this is being said to them. And then it'll be easier to override any misconceptions about the new rule.
Absolutely. The only information, and I will say this to you guys, is the only information that most of my sellers are saying, like, oh, I seen it on the Today Show, or I read it in the Pioneer Press when it first came out, and they were saying that we're going to be saving a ton of money. And I was like, well, let's go back to what they said and really go over it. So they kind of know it, but they kind of really don't, because of the fact that they're not understanding this. And what a lot of buyers and sellers are saying to me is, you're doing this on a day-to-day basis. I don't know how to do this. Because I say, do you want to negotiate? Do you want to be doing these things? And they're like, no, that's why we called you. That's where we're working together. And other agents, it's just basically saying, like, we're a team in this. You know, you're bringing the buyer, I've got the seller. We got to work as a team to get this to the closing table, and then everybody's all good. So it's getting to that point with them and just really educating them. But by putting this verbiage in there, again, it's just a topic of conversation that you have to bring up. If my clients aren't able to meet with me, you guys, I'm doing this on Zoom. I'm doing it on a phone call. If they don't do Zoom, I'm like, we're going to walk through the contract. If it takes an hour, I'm doing it for an hour, because I want them to understand what they're getting into and what this means. Most of the stuff we're gonna jump down here time wise. So in here, this has the compensation for the buyer's agent in here on 147 through 154. So basically you want to put shall or shall not offer compensation, and then you want to check the box with either the percentage or the dollar amount, whichever, you know, you're going to put in there. And then just really, really explaining to them the fact that this is the buyer's agent on the deal, and this is what the buyer's agent is going to get paid. You know, I've done both percentages and low dollar amounts. It just kind of depends on the property. And then just like what we had talked about in the buyer's rep, you know, this goes over the title and asking if they want you to arrange that. Yes or no, going over who title is, what they do. Obviously, going over the foreign investment, make sure you say yes or no. We talked about the agency earlier, you know, going over dual agency again on that. That's something you should have went over on the agency form. And then basically everybody signs it. On here, I go over the wire fraud with them as well. I'm gonna go back up here to the top of this 122. Is there any questions from anybody on the listing contract? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing then. So we will make sure that we get this verbiage out there to you guys, again, on the Facebook Connect page, and also I'll have Jeremy send it out just as an example. You can definitely go back and watch the re-recording with Liz, and she explained how she's going over it with her clients. Randy, anything else you want to add to that?
No. I got a picture here of a guy sitting in a pool with a laptop in the ocean on his phone, and it says what realtors do on Memorial Day weekend, but I can't upload it. So if anybody wants, you know, we'll give you guys the information as soon as we get it. But
Absolutely. On a different note, does anybody have any broker questions for Randy on that end?
two new messages out.
Okay.
Oh, somebody did ask, so Marie made a comment on something, and then
Oh, let me look
it
here.
says, what happened to the listing contract? Says that they'll pay 1% to the buyer rep, but buyer's agent won't bring an offer due to it. Yeah, so you know, the buyer could go around the agent, then the agent could demand their 1% because it's on their buyer. Well, whatever's on the buyer rep, you can go after their buyer for. So a listing contract says that they'll offer what, 1% co-op, I suppose you're asking, and then the MLS or whoever we find out is saying that they're going to offer 1%. The buyers won't bring an offer due to it. I don't know if the buyers, wouldn't bring an offer due to it. So why don't you call me directly if you want to talk about it a little more thorough? Because buyers don't care what you're getting paid, right? I mean, unless they're gonna say, well, we're not gonna pay you the additional 1.5%, and then they're gonna try to go around you. I mean, you can always sue them for the dollar amount that they owe you. I mean, they really can't go. Yeah, let's talk about that one together because I think it's kind of something that people can bounce back and forth for 20 minutes on scenarios. I got 3 calls to make, but I'll put my phone number in here. Okay.
The one comment that I did get to in a text message is buyers thinking that we're going to work for free. And my response to that is if you asked that person to work for free, would they do that? I just I really emphasize the fact that like you go get your hair cut, that's not free. You go and do things. So again, my time, I think once my buyers and my sellers get to know me, and most of them do, within the first week, I'm showing them the value of what I bring. And that's what's setting it apart. So no, I'm never gonna work for free. That's not gonna happen, but any other questions out there before we let everybody go? Matt, I'm just gonna ask you maybe to let everybody know that they can reach out to you as well, and like how to reach out to you with those lender questions.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys have questions on this stuff, or one thing I was going to mention too, just changed since 2 weeks ago when I was on the call. We now have a 0% down program nationwide where it's down payment assistance. Now, most of you on this call, you've probably heard of, MHFA, or no, you guys are what, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Tennessee. So every state has some, state funding program that we've all kind of heard of. But most of those programs are financially, they're kind of garbage. They work for some people, but they're just not great for our clients. Now we have something at Edge Home Finance where we can do 0% down. They're getting it's similar to those setups, but they're getting down payment assistance up to $15,000. So something we've never had access to before for straight 0% down. Even the state programs still require some minimum payment. So that's something really cool that came out that can help all of you guys, because that helps me, helps you qualify more people. I had a ton of people that day. It was the same week of my call with you guys. It just came out like 2 days too late, but I had a ton of customers. I probably texted 20 clients that had been looking that now could benefit from that. So if you guys have questions about 0% down, I can do that in all those states, but should open up a lot of extra business for all of us. So that's great. I can share my contact information. I don't know. Can I put in the chat here and Jill, obviously you have it too, so you could send it out to people. But yeah, anytime if you guys have any questions on anything, or like Jill had mentioned, FHA versus conventional, even if you guys have questions like that, feel free to always reach out to me. I want to be a resource for you guys first and foremost, more than just sell to you or tell you about products. So if you guys do have questions on lending, anything, doesn't have to be NAR related or 0% down related, just definitely reach out to me because I'm here to help. What did you ask, Jill, before I said about the 0% down? You said just
Oh gosh. Now
lending
you're
side of stuff?
testing me, Matt. I'm like,
I think
you're
just
testing
contact,
me.
I think just contact info.
Oh,
Oh
yes.
yeah,
I'm like,
contact info, which I just
haven't
shared with you guys in the chat. So yeah, that's in the chat now if you guys have any questions for me on anything. And then I was just gonna say too, as a silent for most of this call, just kind of reiterating what we talked about 2 weeks ago, that I think I am on your guys' side in this, and our industries are similar and we're obviously very connected. And we've had plenty of things like this that have come out in the past, changes that we thought were going to be big and bad, and they ultimately weren't. So I don't want to be the one that just blows sunshine up your ass, but at the same time, I want to tell you that I don't think that we will have to change the things that we do, but I don't think it will ultimately be, there'll be some pain points along the way, and the buyer's agreement's a little different. And how the seller's agents and the buyer's agents interact is obviously going to be different, just with the NMLS or the MLS stuff alone. But it's kind of Randy and Jill have both said, I think your guys' workaround, there will be something. It's just we don't know the something yet, and that might be August, that might be September. So your business will change a little bit. There's going to be, I always say, you guys are realtors are smart, mortgage loan officers for the most part are smart. Mortgage brokers are smarter, but well, you guys will find a way to figure it out, whether that's in showing time or it's on the website or there's going to be workarounds that you guys that are comfortable for each of you, and I wouldn't be too worried about that. And for us to worry about something now that isn't going to happen really till August as a rollout, you guys will have options, and you guys will have workarounds to be able to do. I think the way that you've always kind of done it, it'll just look and sound a little bit different. And there are going to be, Jill and Randy both said, there's going to be, I mean, my overarching thought on this is like the sky is not falling, and that's what I kind of hear, whether it's media or just in your guys' industry. Like, are there going to be listing agents that do the 0% no commission thing? Like, unfortunately, yes, because that's just the way that, free enterprise works. There's going to be people that try to do that. But as Randy said, if I'm a seller, my home's not going to get sold for top dollar if you're offering 0%. It just won't, because your competition is going to go way down. So do I make more in the end? No. And am I mad at you for trying to pull this to reduce competition on my home? And ultimately, as you guys know, as agents, competition is the best thing for a listing. I would say I want more competition, not less competition. So why would you, as my listing agent, tank my potential competition by trying to throw in that loophole? So that will happen, but I don't think it will happen as much as you guys might fear. And then those agents, that those homes might just not sell, and then they learn not to do that. So I think most people will still do, business as general or business as usual. It'll just sound a little different. So just wanted to give that little rah-rah speech again. I believe in you guys, and I think everything will be okay. So
Thank you, Matt. There is a question in the chat for Marie. I think I read that the VA said buyers can pay their agents. Is that correct?
yeah, on the VA side, we actually haven't gotten any guidance. They're the one agency or group, I would say, that we haven't really heard anything officially from yet, because their systems are the most, I mean, they're, a government group, of course. So VA systems are the most archaic of, I guess, FHA too, but they're still working on more of the logistics on the VA side, because VA language is a little different than the others. FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they've all already come out and said that, like, the buyer's agent commission that we've been talking about isn't part of interested party contribution, so there's no limit that we'd have to worry about. VA still hasn't even stated that yet, but we all assume that they're just going to follow suit with FHA, and same with USDA, because if it did count towards interested party contributions, that would massively hurt a veteran's opportunity to get a home. And the VA is all about promoting and sponsoring home ownership for veterans. So they're not going to make it harder for a veteran to get a loan, where if theirs counts towards those limits, but an FHA borrower doesn't, or a conventional borrower doesn't, that's going to hurt a veteran, and they're not in the business of hurting a veteran. So we're still waiting for some clarity on VA stuff. But for Marie, if you're asking, VA buyers can pay their agent. Well, the buyers can pay their agent in all of these transactions. It's just typically the way you guys have worked is that, the seller pays the buyer's agent, and that's still going to be allowed, as we've talked about. We just haven't heard officially from the VA how that's going to exactly line up. But again, I would say 99.9% chance it's just going to be same spiel as the other ones, where it's not going to count towards those limits. Seller can still pay the buyer. just can't be listed on the MLS. So it'll still be like, what's the workaround for how you guys operate? How do you know the percentage that they're willing to offer for the co-op, as Randy was saying? But yeah, VA is going to follow. Well, they haven't announced it, but they'll follow suit with the others. So it should be business as usual for VA as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. All right, you guys, if there's no other questions for Randy or Matt in there, I'm going to definitely, it's 10:01. So we always say, you know, time is very important. So, if you have any legal questions, please make sure you're reaching out to Randy to make sure that, you're doing things, on the up and up, that is compliant with the state. If you have any, you know, brokerage questions, anything along the lines like commission, how do you get a sign put in the yard, anything like that, reach out to Francis or Jeremy. They are there to help you. And then we will see you guys next Tuesday. And again, thank you to Randy. Thank you for Matt for popping on here again to help on that lender side. And go out and do some amazing things this week and get rejuvenated from the holiday weekend. So we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Have a good
Thanks,
week.
guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Francis.
Bye.
Boop.